Hi again, everybody. Paul Dottino with you on the Big Blue Breakdown as the New York Giants prepare for their preseason opener in Buffalo. Saturday's kickoff is at 1 p.m. We already know, according to head coach Brian Daboll, that one of the marquee players in this game, first-round draft pick quarterback Jaxson Dart, is going to play. Coach Daboll has been very coy about suggesting who would play and who wouldn't play. He has said several times over that he does want to see the rookies get some game experience during the preseason because it is invaluable. However, he hasn't necessarily said which games, which quarters, or how many snaps they might play in, nor has he suggested how many snaps his veterans, or for that matter, his starters might play. So those things do kind of remain a mystery. So we'll keep it here to at least talk about what we do know. Well, let's see. Jaxson Dart, yes, he is going to play some against the Bills. One would assume that at least two of the other three quarterbacks, whether it's Wilson, Winston, or perhaps DeVito, they'll probably all get some snaps, I would assume, but I just don't know. Here's what we do know, though. Again, because of Daboll's preference for rookies to get in, and the fact that edge rusher Abdul Carter was at the podium to have a media session to talk about what he expected in his first game, one would surmise that he is very likely to get some snaps against Buffalo as well. And being the third overall pick in the draft, obviously people are going to be very excited to see what Carter can do. Now, one thing that Daboll did, he wanted to make sure that his rookies were prepared for their first ever professional game, albeit a preseason contest. So a couple of days back, he asked a number of his veterans to get up in front of the room and to talk to the rookies, address them, and give them stories about what it was like for them when they finally made their first NFL appearance. And, obviously that left an impression on several of them. The idea was to tell them to have fun. Go out and play loose, play confident, make sure you pay attention to your details. But more important than any of this is not to press. Go about your game preparation. Make sure you do everything you can do heading into the game so that when you finally get to the game, you don't press. One of the guys who spoke was quarterback Russell Wilson. He had such a good memory that, even though he's 14 years in the league, he immediately recalled a bomb that he threw on a go route, one of his famous moon balls, in his first ever preseason game, and that it went for a touchdown. It's pretty cool stuff. We know how the quarterback room is bonded. Dart has said he's really enjoyed befriending Tommy DeVito. DeVito's only his third year in the league, but he's of the same generation as Jaxson Dart. So they have had a wonderful time bonding, talking together, and of course, sharing all kinds of stories. And DeVito has been invaluable to Dart in preparing him for what he will face, not only this weekend, but also during his entire rookie season. And of course, as we've told you all throughout the offseason, Russell Wilson has been an incredible leader for this team every single step of the way. All right, so that's kind of an overview in terms of player snaps. We don't have specifics, but it does seem like Brian Daboll is leaning a little bit more towards not only getting his rookies in, but he might even get some snaps in for a few of his veterans. The problem is he does have a number of veterans who are a little bit nicked up, and he's got to think about how he wants to handle those guys. Daboll said that going into training camp, the staff had designed a workload schedule for each player on the roster so that they know how many practice reps they want each guy to get every day. And they also have an idea of how much they want to play them overall during the preseason. And that week to week, they will fine tune those preseason snap counts as they get to each game. He does see the value in playing guys during the regular season. He said, extensive study over the last several years about how different coaches have handled preseason snaps. Some like to play a decent amount. Others mostly either don't want to play them but a few snaps or don't want to play the veterans or the starters at all. Of course, the one elephant in the room that says not to play guys is the injury risk. And that's just football. In most cases, in recent years, coaches have decided to go that way and deal with not playing guys because of the injury risk, as opposed to getting them in snaps and trying to reap the benefits of them seeing playing time. So it remains to be seen not only what Daboll will do in this game, but what he'll do the rest of the way. All right, some things you do need to know going in. Andrew Thomas is still on the physically unable to perform list as he rehabs his foot. So obviously he is not going to play. It would appear, you would think, that Malik Neighbors, who has told us a couple of times during the camp that he will continue to manage a sore toe, doesn't think it's a problem. He runs freely out on the field without issue, but one would think that he probably would not play. Cam Scatterboo has been nursing a sore leg. It is very unlikely. In fact, I would say, even though Brian Daboll has said he doesn't believe any of his injured guys are going to be long-term and he doesn't appear to be worried about week one, you would think that, again, he's another guy, Scatterboo, who is not going to play, at least this weekend, against the Buffalo Bills. Couple of notes on how this will affect snaps in terms of guys on the depth chart who are going to get to play. Now, for example, James Hudson, who on, I want to say it was Wednesday, yes, it was Wednesday, left practice early. Now, why do I bring him up first? Well, because he is the third tackle on the depth chart. He is the guy who's supposed to be the swing man in case something happens to either Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle or Andrew Thomas at left tackle. Throughout the course of the offseason, James Hudson has been playing the starting left tackle with Thomas being unavailable. Well, whatever it was that ailed Hudson for the second half of practice on Wednesday, he was back out doing some things a bit on Thursday. So it was good to see him back in gear and out there with the players. However, he did not do a whole lot. So it remains to be seen how much we might see of James Hudson in this game. And again, he's critical because he would be the swing tackle on the roster. Maybe, just maybe, Marcus Bowe, the fifth-round pick out of Purdue, is going to wind up seeing a lot of action in this game. One would think that they're going to want to get him reps, see what he's got, understand how much further he's got to go before he'd be ready for the regular season. Now, whether or not he's on the right side or the left side, I guess Brian Daboll's going to have to figure that out. Stone Forsythe and Joshua Ezeudu are other guys on this roster who have obviously seen at least a number of snaps, in some cases even more than a number, at tackle. Now, Ezeudu does not practice at right tackle. He's usually a left tackle when he's not taking snaps at guard. Forsythe is certainly a swing tackle and capable of playing either side. So keep that in mind as you're looking at the tackle spot during this game. The other offensive line spot that you certainly want to look at very carefully is Evan Neal. We know that he is now being converted from tackle to guard during this offseason. He's played most of his reps, at right guard, but he also could play left guard and has taken a lot of reps there too. Remember, John Runyon was limited at some points during the offseason. Greg Van Roten wasn't always practicing during the offseason. Then he went and had a baby, and so took some paternity time off. So we've seen Evan Neal at right guard, and we've seen him at left guard. The Giants coaches, the Giants players, and even Evan Neal himself feel pretty good about his progress in his first go-round at guard in the pros. We know he spent some time at guard early in his career when he was at Alabama, but this is the first time he's going to do it as a pro. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly how many snaps he takes, and perhaps takes a shot at both the left side and the right side in this game against the Buffalo Bills. Just don't know right now. But that is certainly going to be another very critical spot to watch along the offensive line. Behind the starting center, JMS, John Michael Schmitz, well, Giants have been going with Adam Schlottman and Jimmy Morrissey. Those guys are two centers by trade. Now, see, what makes this interesting for me is that Greg Van Roten also has shown the ability to play center, and he's been okay at it. So I think it's a very curious thing as we get closer to the regular season. How many snaps does Van Roten take at center? Now, why do I say that? Well, because if Evan Neal, in fact, wins the right guard spot for opening day, is it possible then that we would see Van Roten be training more at center if he just turns out to be higher on the depth chart, or deservedly higher on the depth chart, than either Schlottman or Morrissey? I mean, I think it's obvious that Van Roten will make the team because of his ability to back up multiple positions. But I think, that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. We know that Kubas, we know that Stinney, we know that Azudo are all capable of taking snaps at guard. So where's the glut? And how do you move those guys around on the depth chart? Let's go back to the receiver position for a minute, because that's going to be one heck of a battle. And, we all figure Neighbors, Slayton, Robinson, and you really want to believe that Jalen Hyatt is the solidified number 4 receiver on this roster. Well, he's up to 190 pounds now, 20 pounds more than when he came out of Tennessee 3 years ago. And he feels very confident that he's going to be able to have his breakout season. Well, okay, let's assume it happens. The Giants still need to look for a number 5 receiver. Now, Amir Smith-Morset is their kickoff return guy. And by the way, he also is a receiver. So he's going to make the team, I'm pretty sure. But how much does he play at receiver? Don't know. Bo Collins, undrafted rookie free agent out of Notre Dame, has had a terrific offseason. He looks like a guy who could really help himself over the next 3 weeks. And if he can, specifically if he can do it on special teams, that will be very, very interesting to see how the Giants handle his potential roster spot. because there's other guys too who we know are receivers would play a lot on specials. Gunnar Olszewski and former Kansas City Chief Montrell Washington. Now, Olszewski and Washington are more slot receivers than they are outside. Collins is a boundary receiver. So in that regard, they do play different spots. And they have shown different strengths during camp. That's certainly a guy who's going to want to make the most of his opportunity. Beau Collins, I mean. He has also been somewhat limited at practice over the last week or so. So we also need to see what his availability is. Another guy I want to mention, because the Giants have really been banged up here at training camp. They had to sign free agent Jonathan Ward just the other day when rookie free agent Rashawn Baker got hurt and was taken off the roster, waived injured. The Giants didn't want to, we already knew going into training camp that Eric Gray's got a knee injury, so he's been totally unavailable. So that left the Giants with 3 running backs, Tracy, Scatterboo, and Singletary, ahead of the guy who's fighting for the number 4 running back slot, if there's going to be a 4th running back slot on the 53. We don't even know that for sure, but it's quite clear that the guy who's got a real good stranglehold on a potential number 4 spot is former Columbia running back Dante Turbo Miller, who quite honestly seems to have progressed a lot since his rookie season when he spent most of it on the practice squad. He clearly has the most speed of anybody in the backfield, again clocked at 4.28 when he came out of school last spring. So it remains to be seen if they'll keep 4 or not. But Dante Miller has had a really good offseason. And it ought to be interesting to see how much work he gets in this Bills game, because one would think that Tracy and Singletary, if they play at all against Buffalo, will not see many snaps. It will probably be a heavier workload for Miller, and then maybe all in the second half, you might just see Jonathan Ward come in and, gobble up all the carries in the final 2 quarters. But we'll see how that all plays out come this weekend. Finally, a couple other notes to be very careful to watch, because every snap seems to count at these other 2 spots. Great training camp so far for Tay Banks, but ditto for Cordell Flott. I still believe that it's Banks' job to lose, but Flott is certainly preparing a great challenge as they get down to cut down day. All things being equal, I think Banks will retain the job, but do not sleep on Cordell Flott for the kind of training camp that he has had. It's certainly going to behoove the Giants to have a quality number 3 boundary corner on the roster. So just watch how Banks and Flott play against Buffalo. I would assume Banks will get some reps, and I would assume Flott will too. And while I do think Banks has the upper hand, there are still weeks to go before opening day, and he better continue to max out on the field if he wants to keep the job. The other position, quickly before we say goodbye, is at tight end. We know that Theo Johnson, for sure, is the Giants' starting tight end. Behind him, Daniel Bellinger's been the number 2 for a few years. And then you've also got Chris Manhertz and Greg Dulcich and Thomas Fedoni. And Terry is also back there. Every one of these tight ends has looked good during the offseason. None of them deserve to be taken down a notch. So, how many do you keep? 3 or 4? It's going to be tough. Fedoni certainly has a lot of upside. 7th-round pick. Very tall, long arms, great catch radius. But he is a rookie. So, we'll have to see. But do watch the tight end snaps very carefully in this game with the Buffalo Bills. Once again, kickoff is Saturday at 1 o'clock. We hope you enjoy it. And we'll be back on Sunday with a little bit of a game review for how week 1 of the preseason went for the New York Football Giants. And don't forget, we'll be back on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with a live edition of the Big Blue Breakdown to take your phone calls, your video calls, and your chats as the Giants continue to drive down the road of the preseason schedule. For the Big Blue Breakdown, I'm Paul Dottino, and we will see you next time.